Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Classic Plus Show. This is season 3, and we have so much to talk about, so many topics to discuss, so many talking points in general about Classic Plus. Now, you guys see a new face right here. This is my boy Aaron Amir, an absolute legend. He just started making content less than 3 months ago, and he's one of my favorite classic content creators right now. Tell the crowd about
Right.
yourself, my man.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been playing Classic since, well, I guess World of Warcraft in general since 2006. Um, got really hard into it during the Nostalgia period, and then since then it's been like all Classic all the time, pretty much. Um, was really excited about the prospect of Classic Plus after doing like Season of Discovery and everything, and discovering like your content, Tello's content, Solheim, like all of the people in the Classic WoW sphere talking about Classic WoW. I just, I got so amped up, and I've always been like into creative ventures, so I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and here I am making Classic content and Classic Plus content, and here we are, Evan.
And the community is better for it. But everybody wants us to just dive right into it. So we're going to touch up on the first topic, and that is the new hype that's been spreading around the community from content creators like Soda Poppin to RMP to everybody just discussing Classic Plus, what that looks like, what that feels like, and what it actually is. So I just want to do like a brief thing here where you tell me what you think Classic Plus is, and then I'll share mine, and then we'll discuss what other people are sharing about their ideas, and then we'll dive into more in-depth topics after that.
For sure. So to me, like Classic Plus is um, level 60s of the cap. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
if we got to the end of Classic World of Warcraft and we didn't get a new expansion? We just expanded the world that we were currently in with new content. Um, in the production of World of Warcraft, there was so much like an excess of content that they wanted to produce that they didn't have enough time to finish. And so Classic Plus in my mind is like realizing that content and then creating this kind of evergreen server of new things in the classic world.
No, well put. And that's kind of where I'm at. So for me, Classic Plus is effectively like, yeah, some class balancing, like Paladin, Taunt, and whatever. But like for me, what makes Classic Plus unique is the world, is the setting, is the vibe and the feeling. And 2019, and like for me, I started in 2007 with TBC. But I spent a lot of time in Vanilla's world because back then a lot of people just, even with TBC was the current content, a lot of people were stuck playing 1 to 60 because of how new and fresh it was. And I missed that vibe that 2019 brought back, where everybody was discovering and learning. And yes, I know the sweaty, the crowd, the private server people were there and they knew everything, but I could confidently tell you that 90% of the people I played with at launch didn't watch fuck all for guys. They didn't watch shit. They didn't see anything. They didn't know all the min max macro. Nobody was buying Black Lotus because it was 20G on
Yeah.
launch. I remember getting my flask for dirt cheap up until I think early Nax or like late
Oh yeah.
AQs when flask started skyrocketing in price.
Mhm.
Like nobody was min max meta. I could always farm firewater because that was just the thing I did because I liked it making me big. The extra attack power didn't mean shit to me. I was just using. I was a prot warrior, fury warrior with like thunder fury. I was like I want to be big.
Yeah.
So
Big pull.
so I want the world to matter again, and that's what I feel like Classic needs to do is
Mhm.
like reinvent the entire meta. The exact same classic world, new dungeons, new raids, new zones, finishing off the zones, finishing off the quest lines. Like for example, Hyjal and the original Hyjal storyline, which was meant to be us about stopping the resurrection of Archimonde. That's something people don't realize. That the original story there was Archimonde was trying to be resurrected by a demon cult, a legion cult, and we were meant to fight them and stop that from happening. There were multiple fronts there: Alliance remnants, Horde remnants, the Night Elf remnants, and everybody there just fighting to stop this horrendous ritual from taking place. Because Archimonde the first time, the whole world had to get together, yada yada yada. And then of course you have Grimbatol, you have Karazhan. Like the whole point of Atiesh was you got Atiesh from Nak, so you could go to Karazhan.
Mhm.
And so like I want them to finish the world, but that was a very broad and honestly very long-winded answer. I apologize.
Yeah. That's okay. No, but it's like kind of in that same vein, right? Where it's like you want the true vision of the game to be realized, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they didn't have enough time to do. And I think that's like it's interesting for someone who like creates art or any kind of like content. You kind of realize that something isn't fully realized is just good enough. right? You listen to a lot of musicians who create music, and they say, like the song is good enough or whatever. It's like if you had all the time in the world, you would make your perfect vision, but you have to realize that there's a checkpoint you have to get to
Mm-hmm.
and put it out, right? Um, so yeah, and I think one thing that's really important too is just like, and I think a lot of people are yearning for something like this is just like the pacing of classic WoW compared to modern MMORPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of just like ties in with like society and gaming and technology in general. Is just like we're so used to this like bam 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 speed, you know, swiping through TikToks that are 10 seconds or whatever. It's just like you get this like kind of like instant hit over and over again. And I think a lot of people want this kind of like so slow, meaningful experience, right? Where it's like you just take a step back, you enjoy what you're doing. I mean, there's always going to be people who want to just like blast through everything. Like that's fine. But like it's just a different type of game, right? I think we're seeing this shift in gaming where gamers are getting kind of sick of modern game design, right? You can see it with like I think the best example right now is like Call of Duty, right? Where it's like they've gone so far past what people liked about the game that Black Ops 7 is the worst performing Call of Duty in a while, right? And so I think with World of Warcraft, I don't think people are necessarily like sick of World of Warcraft because retail still has an audience, but it's just kind of getting back to, you know, there is an audience that cares about this older, different style of game, how it was meant to be played, kind of thing.
And that is like a big part of the problem is the modern style of the game, right? Like when it comes to, for example, leveling, I struggled to find leveling groups. Not that there weren't any, but like my hours of play meant I had nobody there. But you know who was there? Boosters, hundreds of them, because there was people
Nice.
at work who were had the gaming laptop next to them, and they were AFK at work working, and they would move their character back and forth out of Maraudon or Strathom or whatever. And it's like the aging audience, the aging playstyle. There's so many reasons for why the community and the gameplay has honestly shifted. But I think the major reason is just it's just an older audience who's done older so many times. They don't have a reason to do it. And also back in 2019, COVID, everybody was stuck at home, so everybody was just being a degenerate sweat lord and just playing the game and having fun because everybody got to be a degenerate.
For sure. Yeah, when I mean that was like kind of a perfect storm, right?
It was.
Like it's like the best game ever comes out and you have to stay at home. Like
It,
fuck.
it was like just the coincidence of it all was like this is perfection.
Yeah.
But like across the board, the big issue is I just want to feel how I felt back in 2019 and earlier, like
Mhm.
2007, 8, back when gaming felt rewarding. Like Sod's launch felt like that for me. Now by phase 3 and onwards, it lost that charm. Then phase 8 brought it back. I was like, holy shit, phase 9 classic plus, we're getting closer. And then it was like a hard stop, right? They're like, you got a
Mhm.
taste, now wait till BlizzCon. And I
Yeah.
crashed out, had a full on, whatever. But it's a like classic plus is a dream because it's an idealized vision of a finished classic where we got to see
Mhm.
those unfinished storylines and quest lines that are all around the world. For example, the quest line with the disc from Uldaman, it sends you to
Yeah.
Uldum, and there's no finish to that. Like for example, the original Death Knight was meant to be the paladin player committing an atrocity in the same vein as Arthas and becoming a horde character. That's how you became a Death Knight or Rune Master, or so many of these other little secrets and like design plans that just never came to fruition. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying everything makes sense because, as you said earlier, if we try to make it perfect, we're gonna miss the mark and make something completely different, or it's gonna take too long, or not come out, or whatever. I
Mhm.
don't expect the devs to be perfect here. I just want them to try to finish some of the stuff. Give us a slightly modern spin on all of these original ideas. We want classic but slightly modernized. It's okay to admit that with how the player base is.
Mhm. And I think that we're like in a good position because I feel like there's like speculating about like games that like don't even really have an announcement. Um, which Classic Plus doesn't have an official announcement. I mean, they've alluded to it like as much as possible without saying like, "Hey, we are creating Classic
It's
Plus. What
real,
you
but
guys
it's
are
not
talking about?" Yeah,
Schrodinger's
right.
classic.
It was like that blue
Hmm.
post that they were like, "Hey, everyone, calm down. Remember when we said this?
Yeah.
Like, something's obviously coming, right?" Um, so yeah, I think like it's easy to say like, oh, we know it's going to come eventually, but I think truly it is. Like all the signs are there, right? Like if you were to really break down the conspiracy, this is probably one of the conspiracies that has some of the most damning evidence, right? Like it's kind of right there. Um, and yeah, I think with it when it comes to Blizzard, I know they get a lot of shit for their mistakes, right? Um, I think it's like easy to fixate on like the negative, right? It's like if you had like 100 comments on something, 99 of them were nice, but one person was like "fuck you." You would go to that "fuck you" comment. Like, oh,
Most of the time.
it would eat you alive, right? Like, so like they're not perfect, like you said. Like they've
Hmm.
missed, you know. And I think the classic community is so passionate that like those misses hit even harder, right? So like in Season of Discovery, every miss was like a knife in the heart because it's like, what have you done to my boy? Like
I kind
I
of feel
picture
like,
like
sorry to interrupt. I
no
wanted to
no no
say
you're
that
good.
like, but I think the reason like this the classic like the sword misses hurt so much more because the sword misses are so catastrophic. Like
Mhm.
they affected the game to such a fundamental level that it was like genuinely a knife in the gut, like you said, because like it shattered the
Yeah,
illusion and the dream. Like phase
for
three
sure.
was like a what the fuck is this? And like then
Yeah.
we know now, but we didn't at the time. But they were working with like maybe a 2 month head start to like releasing the content. So we were like, how did
Mhm.
you go from phase 1 and 2 to this shit? This is garbage.
Yeah,
And now in hindsight, we can be like, well, we gave them a bit too much shit. This was terrible, but
it was.
there's a lot more sense behind it. So, but no, I do agree with you. Like
Mhm.
even minor critiques, like for example, people like, oh, phase 2 is getting boring already. Let's go next. Let's go next. Let's rush it 2 weeks ahead of time. We're kind of bored. We're starting to quit. Pressure the
Mhm.
devs, sunken tempo. Like so, the player base has some blame and like the constant negativity online to a degree, but it is what it
Yeah,
is, I guess.
you're right though. It's like the scale of the fuck ups, right? Like, and they recognize that. They know what's a hit and what's a miss. It's like, was Karazhan Crypts better than Nightmare Incursions were bad? You know what I mean? So it's like
Drastically
Nightmare
better.
Incursions were terrible, but Karazhan Crypts was great. So where does that kind of like even out on the scale?
Barely
Um,
moved it a dent.
yeah,
Because the player
yeah,
base is
exactly.
vindictive.
And while I love SOD, and while I am completely against like seasonal experiences for classic World of Warcraft, I think it was essential in future product development, right? Like, would you rather them fuck that thing up in a seasonal server, or would you rather have them, F that up in a classic plus permanent server, right? Where like that mistake is going to impact the future of the game for years to come compared to like a couple months of this thing that's going to end, right? So you do need a playground like that to test ideas. And I'm really happy they did that. I'm sad they shut it down because it was a fun experience, but at the end of the day, like, that it's a stepping stone to something greater,
Absolutely.
which we got a lot out of.
We did. And like the alpha beta process to lead into Classic Plus eventually, which it's kind of interesting because it's tying into like the next part of this half question asked at the beginning. The other creators, for example, Zaryu's poll, Ampi's like videos and Ampi's discussion, Soda Poppin's comments on pretty much every creator, right? How do you
Mhm.
feel like these creators' opinions so far have been? Like you don't have to like name one person or whatever, but like the community census of them
Totally.
and their communities, what's being said about it, the online discourse. Do you feel like players have the right direction, or do you feel like people are kind of missing the point of Classic Plus?
Yeah, I think, like, at the end of the day, I think every creator that I've seen talk about it has the right baseline idea of what Classic Plus is. Like, I don't think I've seen an opinion that's like I've been so like against, where I'm like, oh my god, this person has no idea. And I think it's really good that we have creators kind of at all steps of the follower count, right? You have someone like me who's like a smaller creator with like 500 subscribers. You have someone like you who's at 10K. You have someone like Soda Poppin who's like in the millions of followers and subscribers. You have the entire step of the way. Like everyone is talking about it, which is kind of like a best case scenario, right? It's like everybody's on board with this idea. Um, and the nice thing is a lot of these creators, we all played Classic WoW and we love Classic
Mm-hmm.
WoW. I haven't really seen like a retail creator who specifically does retail be like, this is what I want for Classic Plus. So I think at the end of the day, like everybody is kind of on board when there's subtle nuances where it's like, one person might want more efficient flight paths and another person wants, the flight paths to stay the same because they feel good. You go get a glass of water, whatever. So I think, at the end of the day, everyone generally wants the same thing. And there hasn't really been like a strong opinion of like a game breaking thing that I've heard. Like, I think everyone is trying to create a sustainable experience in the
Mm-hmm.
classic world, right, with their ideas. Um, and it's funny because it's almost like this unspoken thing that everyone agrees upon. It's not like we all got together and we're like, this
Pretty
is what we're
much.
going to talk about, right? Which I think is super cool.
Like fundamentally, everybody agrees on like of course, new zones, both for end game and for the leveling experience. A couple of new flight paths, a couple of new quest hubs, smooth out the leveling experience. And then, of course, that's what we
Mhm.
said. The discourse mostly comes from how should the end game rating experience continue? Should it be
Yeah.
horizontal or vertical progression? Should it be this? Should you have faster mounts? How should professions change? Should gear invalidate this? Should gear no longer really scale past? Like that's the discussion to get there. Talking about the flight
Mhm.
path, it just reminded me of something. I forget which creator
Yeah.
said it, but somebody was like, "I don't want better flight paths. I take a shit during my flights. When am I meant to
Oh,
shit if I don't get the
yeah.
flight paths are efficient?" I forget who said that, but I was just like, you rat bastard, you're gonna ruin everyone's experience just because you don't have a good damn diet.
Oh, I want to say, I don't know if it was like, I remember Guzu saying he was for them
Mm-hmm.
because he wanted to like go get a glass of water or like, go do something
Mm-hmm.
for that 5 minutes or whatever, which like, I get that. Like, I'm almost in that camp. So maybe we're on kind of opposite sides of the spectrum. But like stuff like that too, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's pretty inconsequential, right? Like, I don't think you have say there was a flight path that was 10 minutes and became 5 minutes. I don't think there's a single person that would go, this is unplayable. Like,
Well,
this isn't my classic plus.
so we're gonna use this as like a little discussion or discourse or like a mild debate.
Sure.
But like, why can't you just be AFK when you land? Why does the longer flight path make it better? Like, why does being in the air make that break feel
Yes.
better?
Okay. Here's the thing. What if you land in Ungaro Crater,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's a long flight if you're
Mm-hmm.
coming from north. There's more opportunity for someone to PvP you
Mm-hmm.
if you're there chilling. And in that run back in Ungaro Crater, that's a heartbreaking one. That's a long little walk you gotta
All
take.
right.
So
But it's classic plus. There'll be new spirit.
there's
What are they called?
cemeteries, graveyards,
No,
Spirit Healer.
the spirit healer. I forgot the
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Word healer for a second. There'll be
You're
new
good.
spirit healers in Classic Plus.
Yeah, yeah.
So like the run back shouldn't be that bad. Like Sod had plenty of new spirit healers, which made the experience a lot better.
Mhm.
So it's like I get what you're saying, but it's like
Yeah. And that's one of those things where like, yeah, I feel like it is inconsequential where it's like, you know what, if my flight paths are faster and I gotta slam that cup of water quicker to get back, or I come back and I'm dead, sure, I get it. You could make the argument for like it makes the world feel more grand, I guess, if you're on the flight for longer, you go see more, scenery. But like
mm-hmm,
it's like a very inconsequential thing that like, and I think a lot of those things like people get, there's
mm-hmm.
you could put in 100 inconsequential changes that like doesn't fundamentally change anything and it's not going to be a big deal, but there'll probably be a quality of life
No,
difference, right?
absolutely.
So
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean like it's very inconsequential at the end of the day, but it's one of those things like there's 1,000 of these little things that will make or break the
Yeah.
experience, and they have to pick and choose every little thing that they change because yeah, okay, shorter flat pass isn't that big a deal. But now
Yeah.
there's the new spirit healers. So once you have the new
Hmm.
spirit healers, how does that change the dynamic of that zone? The res back and the run back. How does it change how people quest? Does it enable more risk taking? If it enables more risk taking, do you add harder quests to that location? Do you smooth or streamline the experience? And every little thing you add affects something else. If they add
Yeah, it's
faster
like,
flight paths, new hubs. So that changes
mhm.
the stopping points. So instead of typically running from one location to a different location, you're stopping somewhere else to move somewhere else. So are you killing one part of the world to make another part of the world more active? So like it does tie into everything. So it's like it's a thing of like every little decision has far-reaching impacts because one doesn't mean nothing, but 50 changes. That becomes a
Yeah,
lot.
it's like the World of Warcraft butterfly effect.
Bingo.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, and that raises a really good point, right? Like I think a game this solved and this figured out,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're gonna have that, you know, does it make more sense to run here and die, knowing that you'll spawn there and
Mm-hmm.
then you have a shorter walk, things like that. Um, and then like how that matters, if it does matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it'll matter to some people. But in general, yeah. And these are all like, because that's the thing too, is like classic WoW in general is an old game
Mm-hmm.
that has a slower gameplay style, right? So like how wide of an audience do you want to appeal to? And how many of these things are gonna, make that experience more enjoyable for someone new while not, alienating the core audience, right? Because I think the big thing is with Classic Plus is kind of like this untapped people who have quit over the years,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you look at everyone playing World of Warcraft now, and everybody who has played World of Warcraft in their lifetime but have quit because of
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, or Z. I think that's like the the biggest group of people that you
Oh, for
kind of
sure.
want to win over, right? You look at like the Asmongold's of the world. He's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the biggest example, right? Because he was like he knows like he knew like everything about the game.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in like Azeroth, right? And
Right.
so you have people like that who are looking for a reason to come back but just hate the game, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, these changes, as long as they're not like game breaking, like we've said, like, yeah, switch it up, change it up, make it more, approachable.
And that's beautifully put because, like you said, there's more people that have quit playing WoW than there are current players. I think they said recently, we're just going to take it for a face value, whether it's true or
Hmm.
not is irrelevant, but 9 million subs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 9 million subs. There's over 150 million World of Warcraft accounts ever made. Let's say half of them are second accounts or bot accounts or trial accounts, right? Let's a very huge amount, but that's
Mhm.
75 million real people, hypothetically.
Yeah.
That means there is over what does that come out to? Like 64, 65, 66 million people that have quit World of Warcraft compared to
Hmm.
playing it right now. That is a huge audience to pull back from, to pull into playing the game and caring and coming back to the game, which honestly ties into the next point very, very well. Horizontal versus vertical progression, and what does the player base actually prefer? Because if you look at it, there's a very clear divide between classic and retail.
Hmm.
And that divide is right there in the middle of horizontal versus vertical. So, which do you prefer?
Yeah. So it's a tough call because I feel like I've been exposed to vertical progression more.
Mm-hmm.
And my only real big exposure to horizontal has been like RuneScape, which fundamentally is like a completely different game. And I think for you, like you've played Guild Wars 2 quite a bit, and that's
Mm-hmm.
like a very horizontal game as well. Um, I think vertical, realistically, if I was to choose like one I prefer,
Mm-hmm.
just based off of the horizontal games that I've played, which is like RuneScape, right? So I can say like RuneScape didn't super like hook me because it's just like such a grindy game. But if I was introduced to like a horizontal system in a more traditional like World of Warcraft style MMO, I think that would be like super intriguing because I really like the idea of coming back and my shit's just it's not useless anymore. Like I really like that ethos of like you can quit and come back and you don't feel like you're behind. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the big things with like retail. Why I don't want to get into retail. It's like, well, a new season's gonna come out and I'm just not gonna give a shit because everything I did is just like completely wiped out, right? I think retail is kind of like the hyper exaggerated version of like vertical progression where it's just like instant turnover. Um, diagonal. I want to
Diagonal.
start the term diagonal progression, a nice healthy mix of both. How
No,
about you,
that's
Evan?
fair.
What do you think?
So for
Having
me,
done both.
the issue is horizontal progression hasn't been done in a way that's been good for the majority of the player base in a long time. Like a form of horizontal progression is collecting. That is horizontal
Mhm.
progression because your progress is never deleted or removed. What you earn is what you keep and what you have. So the transmog I owned back in Cataclysm is still transmog I have in retail. The mount I collected back then is still there. There's new stuff to collect, but the old stuff is never gone. Whereas in vertical progression, it would be a thing of like all the mounts I collected and transmog I collected, they don't work anymore. They're effectively terrible, useless. And so the issue there is when it comes to vertical progression, it only really works in a scaling of power and making you feel more powerful and give you more power, which invalidates a portion of the world or the content. So in classic WoW in this context, you have Molten Core to Nax. Nax to TBC, so Nax to Karazhan / Magtheridon and Gruul, almost everybody fully replaces all their gear. Some items do still carry over, very rarely, but very, very minimally. But certain trinkets or items or like tier sets you can keep until you get like a full set replacement from like the first phase of TBC. But for the most part, everybody's completely upgrading. Dungeon greens are better, and dungeon blues are better than a lot of like raiding gear.
Oh yeah.
And then you look at Nax versus Molten Core. Almost every single item in Nax is drastically better than every item in Molten Core. You have some exceptions like Thunder Fury, you have some exceptions like Onslaught Girdle, Band of Acuria, even that gets replaced by certain items. So you have some really big ticket items, but almost everything is still replaced. And that is vertical progression. But it doesn't feel as bad in Classic because Molten Core gear still carries over into Nax. Blackwing layer gear still carries over. AQ gear carries over. So you don't feel completely punished for wearing gear from previous raid tiers, even though you don't feel very strong in comparison, right? Like a Molten Core geared warrior would feel dog shit compared to a Nax geared warrior.
For sure.
But that's vertical progression. But the next step in Classic plus a hypothetical Classic plus of the vertical progression there would effectively be Molten Core, Blackwing layer, AQ would almost all be completely invalid. Because Nax itself almost completely invalidates everything else. Now, yes, I know people are going to say about Warriors wear clown gear. Yeah. But Classic Plus, Warriors would be balanced. Like, the game would be shifted a little bit so it's not just a Warrior meta anymore. Other classes would be optimal and viable. So nobody's going to care that the Warrior wears clown gear. You know, a lot of people are going to be looking at the new raid tier, the new raid gear that is actually somewhat optimally balanced, somewhat optimally attuned to the modern style of game. Is that good? Is that what people want? To want to feel all of Molten Core through like AQ completely invalid, so the only gear that matters is Nax onwards?
Well, you bring up a good point in terms of like the definition of progression, right? Because I think like in my mind, I've been equating progression to power level when that's just not the case, right? Progression is overall progression regardless of like how strong you are. So whether that's achievements, whether that's cosmetics, in the form of like mounts and pets and titles and all these different things, progression is, you know, your account in general, how far you've come and what you have to show off and flex, right? Like that is progression. Now in terms of like what you brought up with like the gear, the clown suits, and should Nax really outshine Molten Core that much? I think when it comes to the earlier sets, like tier 1, tier 2, Nax isn't as bad, but I know it like every set kind of like suffers in a sense where like it's like you said, there's this clown set of gear that's been figured out where it's like if you wear X, Y, and Z, you're gonna maximize the amount of damage you do. So in that, I think that the tier sets all need to be reworked because that's how the game was designed, right? Like the idea is that you go in and you get your tier set and it aesthetically is a cohesive look. It gives you abilities, you know, yada yada yada. And the other epics that drop are kind of like these in between, or in my opinion, probably supposed to be these in between items where like you know, you still get your, you know, epic good gear while you wait for your full tier set, right? So I think the tier sets need to be kind of like adjusted and brought back into more of a not overpowered, but like a more cohesive kind of skill set while the other gear shouldn't outshine it if it's used in combination with all these other pieces of gear. Um, so I think in doing that, to answer the original question, is if they rework these sets and kind of look at the gear as a whole and dial it back, tune it a bit, I think we would be in a much better situation where maybe tier 1 and tier 3 isn't so far apart after this rework. Um, and we're kind of in a different situation, right? Where um, it shouldn't be this huge gap, especially if we're looking into kind of like an evergreen, multiple phases in the future kind of thing, right?
So then let me ask you another question. Do you think people would
Mhm.
actually raid if, say, in this new version, let's just say it's still Molten Core through Nax, hypothetically. We're going to ignore new raids for now. And let's say Molten Core gear is 55% better than Dungeon Priebus. So it's a big upgrade. But then Blackwing
Yeah.
Lair is only 25% better. Then is AQ
Mhm.
also going to be 25%, or is it only going to be 15% better? And then Nax, is that going to be 25 or 15% better? Because the issue there is, even if it's
Yeah.
only marginally better, will people actually
Mhm.
want to grind through Blackwing Lair and AQ and all those raids just to get a very, very minimal raid increase, especially when you're competing with other people for that raid loot as well? When items are
Mhm.
big ticket items, also, how do they do that balancing, the percentages? Is it one big item? So for warriors, it's the new weapon or the new trinket. For casters, the new
Mhm.
wand or the new dagger, or like, the new trinket or whatever. How do they
Yeah.
determine how they should spread that power across multiple new raid tiers? Especially if they update
Yeah.
and homogenize it to a degree.
For sure. So I think even like the percentages that you mentioned seem a little high. Like I'm trying to look at this in the lens of like how many phases deep is it going to get crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, whether a raid set is 10-15% better than a dungeon set, and then the next tier above that is 10 and another 10 and another 10, and we just keep kind of looking at it like that. I think one, if you're a good player against another good player, you will naturally do better with that 10%
Mm-hmm.
buff, and you will have a higher DPS, and you'll see your name higher on the charts. And maybe this is going to bring things into more of a skill based thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the player in pre-raid bis, if they are really good, they could be similar to on par someone who's not amazing but is all right in raid set.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's like an idea that'll add more longevity to like the wiggle room in between
Mm-hmm.
like making multiple sets, um, or what. But it might steer that a little differently. Um, I guess it just depends because like we both know like in a vertical system, shit's gonna get crazy at some
Mm-hmm.
point. So it's like the real question is like, at what point does it get crazy?
Okay.
How long can you delay the point of insanity?
So
And then what do
let's
you do once you reach there?
so let's hypothetically say that a raid tier is a
Mm,
15% increase for each raid tier, and let's say each raid tier is based on OG vanilla times was 5 months a raid tier. And
mm,
let's say 5 months is too long. Let's just say 4 months a raid tier. So every 2 years we get 5 new raid tiers. If it's
yep.
15%, that means every 2 years you will be 75% stronger than the previous. So assuming Molten Core through Nax is phase 1 to 4. What
Mm,
we'll just say phase 1 to 4. Let's say leveling and
sure.
pre-bisque was phase 0. Launch was phase
Mm,
0. So you have phase 1 to 4. That gets you 75% more power than a base level 60.
mm,
Then then tier 4 to tier 6, assuming they do another zero point 0.5 in between, same as the vanilla, that's another 75% increase.
mm.
So that puts you at 150% stronger than launch. So in 4 years, you'd hypothetically, what does a warrior have? What's a full like Nax geared warrior's health values in classic off the top of your head? Do you know?
Oh God, I want to say like it's over 10K.
Like 10,
I
12k.
think
So by
it's
the
quite a
end,
bit.
by 4 years into Classic Plus, we're about rate
Mhm,
tier 8, 10, whatever it is. Not tier, phase 8, phase 9, phase 10, whatever. You have about
mhm.
22k, 23k health. So a fresh level 60 would be
Yeah,
what, 3 or 4,000 versus, a Grimbatol geared warrior or prot warrior or like prot pally or bear tank in
Yeah.
phase whatever. Is that too much in 4 years? If it takes you 4 years to go from there to there.
Well, I think we kind of hit a point. Now, to answer your question quickly, no. But to maybe elaborate on it a little bit, is like the thing with expansion packs that like
Mm-hmm.
it solves this problem that we're talking about
Right,
because it invalidates it, right?
but
So
currently players
your
don't want
avenues
that.
are like, I know, and that's the issue, right? It's like the one option is invalidating and
Mm-hmm.
replacing, and the other option is kind of like what we're talking about now, which is like the gray area of like what it could be, right? So I think there's one option is like the idea of like item level and champion levels, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, kind of like with Elder Scrolls Online, where you hit the max level and then you get like this extra set of points that you spend, but
Mm-hmm.
you're still the same level as someone. You just have this kind of extra shit. So it's like the big issue is like how does it impact the rest of the game? Because if we're talking purely in a raid sense, I don't think it impacts too much if you're playing with the same group of
Mm-hmm.
people. It's the group of people who are slower than the fastest group of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do those players feel when they need to catch up to this? There's this huge gap where it's like it's it's not a level difference, but it is still this like you might as well be a level 30 trying to catch up to level 60 at that point
Right.
when it comes to like a power scale, right? So it's like, and that's why I bring up things like item levels. Well, I don't like item levels as a general kind of like idea,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like how do you lock
So here's the
things
hypothetical. Let me
into different, yeah.
let me throw a hypothetical at you. Say
Sure.
every six raid
Mhm.
tiers, they just invalidate the gear and start a new season. You don't lose your character, you don't lose all your achievements, all your titles and your mounts and your collectibles, but all your
Mhm.
gear becomes locked gear, and
Yeah.
you effectively get like everyone like at the end of a season, whether you completed the highest tier raid or not is irrelevant. You all get
Mhm.
effectively TBC launch gear again. So all your
Yeah.
previous gear is now locked. It's just transmog or whatever, and you start with like brand new dungeon gear, like just before pre-bis gear, and then the next three
Mhm.
years is 6 new raid tiers, where you got to start the gear
Yeah.
grind from the beginning, and then 3 years later again.
Mhm.
Would that
So
be appealing? Would that be a nice feature for you? So instead of losing
yeah, yeah.
everything and making an expansion, your character just
Mhm.
gets knocked down a peg, and you restart that grind. So
Yeah.
everybody's
So I
fresh.
yeah, so I've I heard an interesting kind of conversation point on a Willy video recently
Mm-hmm.
where it was um what if you take like the older content and make it easier?
Mm-hmm.
Um so instead of necessarily like invalidating that,
Mm-hmm.
is what if you take this older content, make it easier in a sense? And what I really liked in it kind of works in kind of like a fantasy lore
Mm-hmm.
perspective is like say you have Molten Core, right? And you're at phase 6, shit is crazy, there's a huge power difference.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to run Molten Core with a smaller group and being able to break down those items to get materials to craft catch up gear to bring you up to speed in a sense so that you can still do those old raids, and it benefits you to set you up and put you in a spot where you don't feel like things are being invalidated by any means,
Mm-hmm.
but it's acting as a catch-up mechanic in the same way that like a Zul'Gurub or like an AQ20 kind of fits into it. So I think like catch-up mechanics are kind of a little bit of a better situation than like this rotating invalidation or whatever.
You
Um,
think so? I kind of feel like a seasonal model that doesn't invalidate and make you restart like your character from 1 to 60 and all these things is the better system in my opinion. And I'll explain why. At a certain point, a lot of people will just simply say, I'll just wait for Molten Core to become a dungeon. I'll wait for them to 10
yeah.
man it. There's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people that play the game in a way where they
Sure.
don't really want to do the high end content, so they'll just wait. And classic kind of multiple difficulties, at least not in my opinion. Well, I mean, they can add a heroic mode that drops 0 extra gear, 0 extra anything. That's for passing only. The bosses are much harder, more difficult, but you get like a title, or every item has like a fiery cosmetic, or like, you know, in Blackwing there, like a black fire. Then in AQ, you have like gas, and then in Nax, you have like an undead blue glow or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
I feel like a seasonal model is better because you go into it knowing. Because a lot of people
Yeah.
be like, I can't play early season, I'll come back mid season. Or I finished
Mhm.
the first 3 raid tiers, I'm busy for life, I'll be back at the beginning of the next season. So you never feel
Mhm.
like you fall too far behind. Because with your version, the issue becomes in 5 years. Now, again, I'm not saying either version is better, I'm just giving my counterpoint.
No.
It's like, in
Yeah.
5 years, we're going to be in, say, Hyjal, and Hyjal's now a 5 or 10 man dungeon, doing Hyjal catch up gear, so I can now go
Mhm.
raid lower Grumbatol, or Super Molten Core. Like, I'm not sure what direction they're gonna go, right? So you get these
Yeah.
issues of there is no, like, that's the big issue, is there is no great solution to the vertical versus horizontal grind issue, because we
Mhm.
haven't even touched horizontal. This has just been vertical. The horizontal grind
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just as problematic, because who's gonna keep raiding if you get Nax gear and every raid that comes off the Nax is the exact same level of gear as Nax, just different like
For
set
sure.
bonuses or tier bonuses?
Mhm.
Exact same power, no more power.
Yeah.
That's it. You've capped it. That's what Guild Wars
Mhm.
2 does. There's new gear, new raids, new dungeons, but it's different flavor of gear. You don't get stronger.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I do like what you're explaining because it made me think of like kind of like a horizontally ish
Hmm.
way about about it, right? Where you have this kind of rotating seasonal thing, but with like an achievement system
Hmm.
or some kind of like you are rewarded for participating,
Hmm.
right? So while you're no better off in power,
Hmm.
you are better off in aesthetics,
Hmm.
which is
Exactly.
arguably more important in an MMORPG, right? So it's like
So I feel like
the
transmog. Sorry to interrupt. I
yeah,
just wanted something. I
no,
don't feel
no.
like you should have like actual transmog here, but I feel like you should have a toggle for effects, and you should get
Mhm.
effects that, like, glowing wing effect, or like horns, or like
Yeah,
a fire halo for finishing a season, like that
for sure.
seasonal reward for finishing it. So that's all I wanted to
Yeah.
say. Continue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like mounts, titles, and like things like that. I'm not. I like while I like the idea of transmog, and while I am all right with the idea of transmog in classic, I think it comes with a big like if,
Hmm.
where it's like transmog for what you can see, but toggleable where you
Hmm.
can turn it off for other people.
Exactly.
I think that's like super important, right? Because like a big thing with classic is just you know, being able to see what the other person is wearing and kind of sizing them up in that sense. Um, so yeah, and that's where kind of this more horizontal mindset can come in, where like we talked about before, where it's like it's not a power based progression in a sense, right? Where what if this horizontal mindset is working around a vertical system in a sense, right? Where you have this vertical system that resets, right? And so that's what kind of gives it this horizontal feel of like, you're not fucked in the future, right? Because you're so far behind. And then it kind of adds horizontal elements by participating in that looped system. You're getting rewards over time that are meaningful and kind of make people want to do, you know, the content. I think
Like,
that's
it's
a
like it's just like a complicated discussion. So
it
like,
is, man.
the more, and that's the thing with classic buses, is like, my original beliefs from 3 years ago to my beliefs now are two separate systems. The core fundamentals of new zones, new raids, new dungeons, like the core fundamental of what everybody agrees on hasn't really changed. But a lot of the
Mhm.
intricate little decisions, the science choices, that's shifted a lot. And the more you talk with people, the more people realize, oh shit, I didn't even think about that. Because
Mhm.
it's like, people forget how big of a game and how complex of a system classic WoW really is. So you get this issue of like, you discuss one facet and you only think about that without thinking about everything that gets affected by it.
Mhm.
Because like this is just another thing to add on to like the vertical progression. At a certain point, are they going to upscale every dungeon? Are they going to downscale every raid? at a certain point, what becomes content worth running when you're so much powerful? Because at a certain point, it's going to be like a Wrath level person going back and soloing a Nixia for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, the issue is like that invalidates previous levels of gear, previous like dungeon experiences, open world leveling. Imagine being a level 60 player at a level 55, and like yo guys, give me some help. Some Grimbotol phase 8 motherfucker is ganking me, and your guild's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
dude, you're on your own. He's gonna kill the whole raid team. Good luck.
yeah, for sure.
So it's like,
Yeah. And I think these are like the, I'm gonna say, like, not sexy details that are the
mm-hmm,
most important, right? Because there's like the, I'd say like the sexy details are like, a new zone, a new dungeon, these visual, beautiful, expand the world kind of things. But then there's kind of like the nitty gritty of like what we're talking about, where it's like this is really going to impact the game on kind of a major scale, and set, you're teeing yourself up for a successful future in how you're going to grow as a game. um, and yeah, I think realistically, like what's your question for you, Evan?
mm-hmm.
What's your realistic, we can talk about vertical versus like
Okay.
horizontal all day, but what's your realistic, you know
What
what's
I
gonna happen
want
kind of,
or what I think is
what
gonna happen.
no, no, what do you think the realistic outcome is gonna be?
So the realistic outcome is they fall into one of two traps. They try to be really
Mm,
horizontal and they end up having to backtrack on it and go vertical, which pisses everybody off because it
mm,
invalidates a lot of systems. And like it's like by the end of Nax or by two more phases, they realize people are starting to like log off and go play other games because I don't, this raid is too difficult or too complicated. I'm gonna wait for the next raid. Yeah, I don't, the aesthetic choice of phase 5 doesn't appeal to me.
mm,
That's a horizontal progression trap. For example, I skipped Janthia Wilds for Guild Wars 2. It didn't look appealing to me. It looked cool, but like Secrets of the Obscure, that was something I played, but I didn't play Janthia Wilds. I came back for the latest expansion. So the
mm,
issue there is when the game was fully horizontal, I can go back whenever I want. That raid is always relevant. That raid is always going to be good. So not always is it going to be run. Whereas the vertical trap is 6 years in, if they don't do a seasonal reset or something, they let things get too powerful too quick, and like you gotta let people know ahead of time, right? There's a
mm,
difference between, for example, going into season 1 of Classic Plus, knowing that 3 years in, all my stuff gets dropped down, and I get my achievement, my mount, my titles, etc., and I'm good. Versus being
mm,
3 years in or 5 years in, and the devs realizing that holy shit, three people are like two manning Kasich and Azurgos,
mhm.
and then like being like, "Yup, we're gonna do a stat squish."
Yeah.
That's going to make everybody really mad because it wasn't expected. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to make a mistake. I
Mm,
think they're going to try to design a new, organic, unique way of doing either horizontal or vertical. I can't speak to what, because Saul showed me that they're very creative, but creativity isn't always great, especially on
mm,
systems as complex as this. Vanilla WoW was a fluke. They admitted it. They were throwing
mm.
shit at a wall, and half the game didn't stick. Legitimately, half of Vanilla WoW was random as fuck. They even admitted that they were making shit up on the fly.
For sure.
If you read John Stat's book, it was literally saying like they'd go to a meeting and they'd be like, well, what's the plan? Some guy's like, I thought about this dungeon, and be like, go make that. And the guy's like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. And so it's like, and then TBC, they streamlined the whole process because
For
Vanilla was
sure.
3 years, 2004 2007, and they learned a lot. The
Mm,
Classic Plus, I don't think will have that luxury in the sense that people are going to be like, you already had SOD. You had your
mm.
chance to learn. You don't get to fuck us over
Yeah,
this time. You spent a year in SOD for SOD was 18 months from start to end. November
yeah.
to June, I think. November 2023 to June 2025. Um,
Mm,
so boom, just like that. So that's the big issue. Is a lot of people have this mental expectation of what it's going to be like, and if they don't come out ahead of the curve and let us know, it's going to piss
mm.
people off. I think they're going to fuck up. I think one way or the other they're going to fuck up because they're going to create a system that's unique, and that's going to be a dog shit system that's cracks appear in 2 to 3 years. It's not going to be immediate,
Yeah.
but I think it is going to show cracks eventually.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
What
I
about
mean,
you?
I don't think I think a realistic outcome might even be like your seasonal idea,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like familiar for the devs to implement and do, because it's so much like akin to like the retail setup, where it's like you're taking this idea of like everlasting, play the game over and over,
Mm-hmm.
And the example that I thought about too is like you're talking about Guild Wars 2 and how you don't like how something looks, you can just come back the next whatever and get that. But Guild Wars 2 doesn't have a subscription,
Mm-hmm.
right?
True.
And this is like there's the financial motivation of making a system that's going to require people to constantly play or want to play, right? So that's when we think of like classic and classic plus and systems and longevity of the game, I've been trying to think of it lately like in a business sense too, right, where player retention, keeping subscription numbers consistent, and keeping that cash flow um, consistent, right? And so that's where a seasonal rotating idea and mindset like you were talking about, I think that's where that kind of plugs in a little more as a business and as like a money making machine, right? Where that's the thing in retail that just people never quit, because there's always something and they're always subscribed. Where if they knew they didn't have to pay and they could come back, that both negatively impacts the game and Blizzard's financials, right? So I think from a realistic standpoint, I think whatever is going to generate the most consistent revenue is probably going to be the system that they go with.
That would be some form of like vertical progression with a lot of horizontal progression systems baked in. So like vertical raiding, horizontal collecting, horizontal guild progression, like all these extra things alongside it to make the horizontal feel good and distract from the fact that the game is going like this.
Diagonal. Having diagonal. I'm
I,
saying, brother.
I, I, I,
Diagonal.
I get exactly what you're saying, but I don't think
That's
the diagonal is gonna work. Like, let's be real. Like, let's be real
yeah.
here. Um,
But what happens when you mix a vertical line with some horizontal lines? It starts going diagonal. Diagonal progression.
if you add vertical, horizontal, and diagonal lines,
No,
you
no, it's like
get.
yeah.
I thought you were about to go like this, and I was like, don't finish that.
Don't finish that. Yeah. We drove too many lines and we're gonna be in some hot water, Evan. We'll just
Yeah, but like,
that's
so like the Mike. So you asked me the question.
Mhm.
Do you think it's gonna be good? What system they choose? Because you asked it to me, so I gotta ask it back to you. Do you think the devs are gonna
yeah.
make a good system on launch?
Damn. That's a tough call. I think they will. I think regardless, people are gonna play it.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be good. I sound like the most like hoped person right now. That's like they're gonna do it. It's gonna be good. I swear. Like, but no, I think it's gonna be fun. We've learned a lot from Sod.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sod was fun when it launched.
Mm-hmm.
We have that to kind of give us some hope. Um, but I think it's not going to be dog shit. I don't know if it'll be the best case scenario, but I don't think it's going to be like this isn't playable. Not
Mm-hmm.
for me. Looks like Classic Plus failed, guys. This just isn't my thing. Like, I think it's not going to be perfect. Just like Classic Plus as a whole. I think that's the big thing is like temper expectations, because it's going to suck in some regards and you got to prepare for it. Not every song on the album is a banger. You can't have fucking 12
And
singles on a
the
CD.
the other part of that is they have to make the game for the majority, and we
Mhm.
might all fundamentally agree on certain key aspects like new zones, new raids, new dungeons. Cool, everybody can
Mhm.
get behind that, or 99% of the population, because I know there's some people like no new zones, no new raids, just next. Like, shut the fuck up. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
the majority can agree on that. But there's
Mhm.
always going to be things we
There's an
disagree on. There's going to be a
yeah.
lot of things I don't like about
Mhm.
Classic Plus. I'm still going to love the game, but I'm going to be like, man, I wish I didn't do this. But it's not me or you or Soda or Armpy or Willie or anyone else that makes a decision. It's the devs trying to
Nope.
make a game that's going to probably be played by 5 to 15 to 20 million people. Will they keep
Mhm.
playing the whole time through? Absolutely not. A lot of people are going to quit. But like,
Yeah,
this is an MMO competing with itself for the number 1 and 2 spot. So whether retail
for
or
sure.
classic WoW is successful, you got 1 and 2, and then Ride MMO in the corner as the RKO at some point, whenever if it launches. But like, it is what it is, which actually ties perfectly into the next topic, which is
Beautiful.
what do the majority actually want? This is like the big question in the sense that we talk about
Mm.
from a content creators, or like, for example, Zari's audience and his poll, or my community and its poll, or for example the videos you make, or what Willie talks about, and everyone's talking to a
Mhm.
different audience. I'm talking to diehard Classic Plus fans. My whole brand is Classic Plus. I'm talking to people that want
Mhm.
the zones, the world building, the new, like the unfinished storylines, like Illidan and the original Black Temple and the Illidari as a faction. The people that want Naga as a playable race, who want the ogres to be finished, who want these locations to be added to the game, like Ajara Crater and stuff like that. Versus, for example, Zari's audience, who want to play the game. They want the raiding, they want the dungeons, they want the end game progression systems. Versus Soda Poppin, who probably wants PvP. Actually, I don't know exactly what he wants. He hasn't really sat down and done like a 2 hour breakdown of I want this and this and this. But his community is a
Mhm.
much broader, a lot of quit people that have quit WoW. Versus Willie, classic players from 2019 till now who have quit and no longer play the game but still enjoy partaking in the classic conversation and listening to it. So every community is
Mhm.
completely different. So which one is the majority and who should the game really be made for? Should it be made for the existing current playing player base? Should it be made for retail players to come to classic? Should it be made for the era, like the OG, like the anniversary crowd? Should it be made for the people
Mhm.
that are across the broad spectrum? People like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but most don't play.
Mhm.
In your opinion, who should Classic Plus be
Yeah,
made for?
for sure. And yeah, it's hard because like each one of those sample sizes is like a small fraction
Mm-hmm.
percentage of like what the overall player base is and represents, right? Like if you did a survey that had 2000 results, like that would be considered a really successful survey.
Mm-hmm.
But you put that into like the grand scheme of like amount of people playing the game, and 2000 out of a million isn't going
Yeah.
to be a demographic you want to design the game for, right?
Exactly.
Um so I guess we'll go through like each group. So like classic era,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't think you should like this might ruffle some feathers, but I don't know if that's like the perfect demographic to base like what you're going to make the game off of because that crowd is very adamant on no changes. And so it's going to be hard to win them over with any amount of changes, right? The classic era, group doesn't even want to play anniversary because of the subtle changes that they've made, right? So I think like a good demographic is people who you know, played classic era through Tamisa Pandaria is a good group of people. I think people who played Season of Discovery is like a good group of people. And I think people I don't know if retail is like a super great demographic because it is so different and you might mistake like making a retail minus, which is what people don't want, right? Because it's like if you just wanted to play retail. And I don't think those people shouldn't have a voice in general because they're still lovers of World of Warcraft and some of them have played World of Warcraft since vanilla. Um, so it's a slippery slope when you kind of take all these parties into account. Um, Now, I think where World of Warcraft fell off in general and why we've had so many people quit over the years is because you try to make this game appeal to so many people, it doesn't appeal to, you know, a lot of people, right? Where it's like if you alienate your core audience, you you have to find a new audience, right? And so you lose people along the way. And that's how we're in the situation we're at now, right? Where there's retail, there's classic, and there's this like classic plus, like if we're looking at like a Venn diagram or whatever. Um, and so I think there's a lot of strength in like sticking to your guns and just like I think that was like the power of World of Warcraft in the beginning. Like this is what we made, you know, and this is what it is. And people loved it and told their friends about how much they loved it, and they, by default and seeing everyone enjoy it, wanted to come play it. It wasn't like Blizzard had to make all these changes to appeal to this broader audience, right? It was just a really good game with a cohesive vision. So I think like as long as they don't try to like, oh, we're doing this for the SOD players, and oh, we're doing this for the classic era players, and we're doing this for the retail players. Like you're creating this fucking jigsaw puzzle of shit where it's like if you just have like a cohesive vision where it's like this is the ethos of the game. We're not trying to appeal to literally everybody. This is the game, have at it, right? Because when you try to appeal to so many people who like so many different systems, like who do you really appeal to, right? Like if you're making a retail minus, why wouldn't someone just play retail? And if you're making something extremely classic with minor changes, why wouldn't someone just play classic, right? So you have to find a unique identity for it, which is gonna, and that's the challenge, right? Is like creating a unique identity for the game based off of, some core fundamentals from classic, but this extra, sauce on top that's going to keep people playing and want to have people be interested in the project.
Incredibly
Is that
well
a
put, because it's like you're very valid in the sense that like it has to be a little bit of everybody, like like so many different groups, and you have to like draw like the outer circle of all of them. You don't want the core
Mhm,
players of any of these groups, because those are the core players of those groups. The core era player, the core anniversary player, or the core retail, or the core hardcore player, they're always going to want to play their own version of the game. Whereas if you want to create your own new core, you just got to make a good
well,
game and let people come and create that core by fundamentally enjoying and creating their communities inside the good game that you make.
mhm,
So you can't just take someone else's player base in today's day and age. You gotta effectively earn your player base and make them want to play. So in Classic Plus' context, like you said, we can write off the era player base, and yeah, like it's gonna ruffle some feathers, but fuck your no changes. Y'all literally
mhm.
complained and bitched and moaned until y'all had the Alliance Ren buff removed, and now you guys still mind control yourselves to get a Ren buff.
Yeah, like
What was
it's
the point of that? I've thought that was the dumbest thing.
exactly.
I still just don't think it was good. And like I like Cargos, great guy, but I think that
Mhm,
movement was fundamentally a bad movement for the classic player base or the era player base. But that's
mhm.
a whole different discussion. Anniversary.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough changes to be a great game. It's worse than 2019 in every metric in every regard. The player
Mhm,
base is fundamentally not as nice, not as good, not as enjoyable to be around. At the highest level, it's drastically better, but the average player quality seems to have gone down.
mhm.
Um, and so
I
it's just
don't think that's
no.
Yeah.
Go
I don't
ahead.
think that's due to the changes though.
I think to the people that already played the first time and finished everything, not wanting to come back and
Yeah.
do the exact same thing again with very minimal
Mhm,
changes. Sod,
exactly.
while great, was a weird fuck I can't speak simulacrum of like audiences merged together to make a game that
Mhm,
was fundamentally flawed from the very beginning, design philosophy wise. It was fun
mhm,
and I loved it. I had a blast playing it. But it pulled from so many different versions of the game. For example, it had mop features and wrath features and retail features and classic features. And it didn't really
mhm,
pick the lane it wanted to stick with. For example, we use the Chinese Titan Reforged servers. Very clearly, not a classic game. Very clearly, not a retail game. It's effectively it's Wrath Plus. I guess would be the
yeah,
right definition for it. And that's what
100%.
they went out to make. That was the whole goal of it.
Mhm,
A clear vision is needed,
mhm,
and the Classic Plus game and the community it's made for needs to be from the huge majority that quit, because you're going to pull a bigger, healthier player base from people that no longer play the game than you are from people that are already addicted to and playing the current game right now. At least
mhm.
that's my opinion.
Yeah. And it's a balancing act too, right? Like you don't want casual, your casual horde of players who probably generate the most income, the dudes who go to work, who will buy the WoW token, who will buy the mount because their time is worth more than like their money in a sense, right? Where it's like I'll just buy it because it's going to save me money. So there's like that giant group of people And I think that was like a failure on Sod's part, where I felt like at the end game, I had never played a version of World of Warcraft that was more, I don't know if sweaty is the right word, but just like so uninviting for somebody to take part in endgame, where is the one version of the game where like I felt like every raid I was looking to join, it was like, what's your resume? What's your fucking Warcraft logs? Give me 3 references. I need your social insurance number. Like all these things where it's like, fuck me. Like it's just like, and I just didn't partake and didn't play that, right? So it's like making something that's like approachable and easy for like this group of people that's kind of like your uh there's like a vocal minority and then there's like the majority, right? And I think um it's kind of like making a game that's going to appeal to both parties, which I think classic World of Warcraft did really well at the time, right? Where it was a game that ran on everybody's computer. It was interesting, it was new, it was solo friendly, it was approachable, and then there's this high skill ceiling for that top
Mhm.
small percent of people to participate in, right? And that's what I liked about like, I mean, this is kind of like a bit off topic, but that's what I like about like 40-person raids is like you can have 20 people who are pretty decent and another 20 people who are kind of just like they could be sleeping at their keyboard almost and you'd still get the raid done, right? Um, and when it comes to loot distribution, the players will figure it out. Um, but yeah, I think it's like creating this game that's going to appeal to as many people. And I'm trying to bring that like business mindset into it too, right? Like what's going to be the most income for the company? Because at the end of the day, they're a company that makes a product. So how do you market
And
that product?
I think Blizzard is on the safer end of Microsoft's 30% profit margin metric, because I know for a fact Classic makes more than a 30% profit margin. Like, we got to be very real about this. It's got
Mhm.
60 employees, and even on the hypothetical, I did the math for this on stream at one point, but let's assume there's 45 Classic WoW employees, and let's assume they're all getting paid California pay of 200,000, right? Every single person.
Mhm.
Um, that comes out
Bust out that
to
calculator.
$9 million per year,
Mhm.
assuming Classic WoW has only 1 million subs. We're assuming here, right?
Yeah.
Let's say of the 9 million, only one are Classic. We're going to average it down to $8 per sub because of every region and regional pricing. So that's 8
Mhm.
million times, 8 million times 1, so that's $8 million. That's what they make per month, times 12.
Mhm.
They make $96 million a year. Minus 30% in taxes, that's what? 8 times 3, 24 million, minus 24 million, give or take. That math is very wrong. I apologize. That's
No, it's
72
okay.
million left over, minus the 9 million from the dev costs. That's 63 million. And let's just say
Mhm.
another 13 million, hypothetically, for random expenses that I'm not like mentally consisting. That's 50 million profit.
Mhm.
That is a profit margin of 50%, give or take. That's just net revenue, 50 million. Again, that's assuming
Yeah.
there's only 1 million subs. If it's two,
So yeah.
three, and then maybe the money amount is high, maybe instead of $8, it's like $9.50 or $11, like net profit, like after all expenses or taxes or whatever. So you see this and you
Mhm.
just think to yourself, like, they're doing so well that hitting those profit margins shouldn't even be difficult, especially if they add like an in-game store, a WoW token,
Mhm.
transfers, level boost, all these things like cosmetics, pets, toys, mounts. They're gonna rake
Yeah,
in millions of dollars.
for sure.
I
It's
think
like
the
a
math
disgusting
was that
amount.
the Brutosaur made $300 million in 2 weekends, something like
Yep.
that.
That's
I
why they
think it
brought it
was,
back.
yeah, they brought that shit back. They're gonna make another 300 million.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. For real.
so like that, so that's
Make
the
more than
issue.
Call of Duty Black Ops
Yeah.
did.
Boo hoo! Black Ops only sold 18 million copies this year, the worst performing Call of Duty
Yeah.
in a long time.
Yeah.
But like my point is, I think Classic WoW safe. I think Classic Plus is gonna be safe and make the money. I do
Mhm.
think it's gonna be somewhat egregiously monetized solely because that is just modern
Of
corporations,
course.
modern like they don't even
Mhm.
need it to make disgusting profit. but you can make
Yeah.
disgusting profit even more disgusting.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going to happen.
I think the absolute minimum, there's going to be a WoW token.
Do you think
I
it's going
think
to be at
that
launch though?
everyone can. I wouldn't be surprised because old school RuneScape is kind of like their direct like point of reference
Mm-hmm.
of being like a classic plus that's been successful, like extremely successful over time and has only grown, right? And they have their bond, right? So I think there's justification from the market. I don't know if it'll be on launch just to preserve some kind
Mm-hmm.
of, but you like they'll just say some bullshit like, you know, we've ran the numbers and this actually helps mitigate gold farming and this is good for the players and that's why we're introducing, some bullshit about why it's good for the players and blah
Mm-hmm.
blah 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 blah. And eventually it'll be in, but I don't think right away. Wouldn't be surprised if it's right away, but further down the line, almost a sure bet.
No,
And
for
when it
sure.
comes to like monetization, I think being realistic is like we have to like swallow a certain amount of like monetization and be okay with it, right? So like I think like one token, two account services, like your basic
Mm-hmm.
faction swap, race swap, name change, all that shit. I think that's kind of like a gimme.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty harmless. Mounts.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should be, it's not great, but I think mounts are realistic. None like no utility mounts. I think utility mounts are kind of dog shit in this capacity, like
Mm-hmm.
the Brutosaur, for example. Purely cosmetic mounts. Um, I don't really know about cosmetic sets of gear, but it just depends on a transmog system. But I think if there's like token account
Mm-hmm.
services and say like mounts, like you're already off to the races making a shit ton of money. And
Disgusting.
yeah. And I don't think you would piss too many people off with that.
No, I
Like
do
there's
think.
obviously gonna be the
Look,
people who are like, oh, this is fucking dog shit, but like there's realistic, right?
yeah, absolutely. I'll say it. The WoW token, probably year 2, maybe year 3. At max year
Mhm.
4, it'll be in game. Level boost, end the year 2. By like the end of like the second year, I think they drop the WoW token. Not the WoW token, the level boost. Every other
Yeah.
feature from launch. I think they might only launch with like, just like name change, server transfer, this and that. But I think by the first 6 months, we'll get our first in-game mount. Or they might launch with an in-game mount to prepare people and do one every 6 months.
Yeah.
But that's definitely
Yeah, I think
coming.
that's
And
I think it's realistic.
people are gonna swipe. They're gonna swipe.
Yep.
It's what it is.
Absolutely. It's the thing, it's like they wouldn't do it if people didn't spend millions of
Pretty
dollars on
much.
it.
Exactly. Which does bring me on to our final topic. Is there any topic you want to discuss right now?
Um, honestly, just that little monetization bit.
Yeah.
Just like things to like temper expectations. And we've kind of talked about that the whole
Mm-hmm.
way. It's just like I think that's a big thing. Is just like tempering expectations, like the hard to swallow pills, right? Like monetization decisions being made that might not, go with your exact
Mm-hmm.
mindset of classic plus being okay with it, right? I think that's just and we'll talk about that more in future like episodes and stuff,
Absolutely.
just like steering
Absolutely.
expectations. But yeah, that's kind of it.
That is probably going to be the next episode is expectations. But
Yeah, yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show, my man Aaron. This was an amazing episode. And thank you to everybody for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. You can find my boy Aaron at his channel at Aaronamir. That is Aaron IMIR.
Mm-hmm.
I said it correctly, yes.
Aronomir, yeah. You got that.
But go
Bingo.
ahead, give that outro to yourself. Tell the people some things about yourself and where else they can
Um,
find you.
yeah. TikTok, I make shorts, like little nostalgia bait shorts with like a CRT monitor playing games and stuff. Yeah, YouTube, Twitch. Maybe I haven't started streaming yet, but I'm sure I'll get to that. Um, and you'll see me on the next episode, and probably the one after that. Oh,
But thank you all for watching. This man is an absolute legend. I'm so glad to have him on the show. And my name is Ebonheart. Y'all can find me at Ebonheart or Ebonheart TV everywhere. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Let me know who you want as a guest to join the show with us. I'm looking at bringing some new people on that you guys haven't seen on the show before. Thank you all. Ebonheart out. Peace.